And welcome into a recap week of round number one here, live with Friday Night Drive. Matt Rodewald, Steve Soucie. We're taping earlier in the day than we normally do, and that means that we're running around doing things. Souce, what are you up to on this Monday as we're taping? What do you have? What's happening? What's on your plate today?
Well, just kind of running around trying to get my life organized after a big weekend of playoff football. So, sometimes that's easier said than done. I had a little mishap on my scheduling. I didn't realize we were doing this early until a couple of minutes ago. So we're getting it done, and happy to be talking about round one wrap-up football.
Yeah, and that's my fault because it's crossover season. Basketball starts, football winds down, so I will take the blame for that. We're going to talk about a few things in terms of football and the dominance of some of these conferences that we've seen. What week 10, so to speak, of the postseason was like. Got a little rain on Saturday night in some of the games, especially the one that I was at Saturday evening. But obviously the big story that the folks in the football circles are talking about is the fifth down scenario that's happened down state. And I want to jump right into that and see if we can kind of unpack it and explain it and talk about what's next in this situation. This was the Fairfield-Porta game. Suze, why don't you walk us through what you understand the situation to be?
Well, basically what happened at the end of the football game was that Fairfield was playing Porta. At the time, they held an 8-6 lead in the waning seconds of that game. Porta had drove the ball inside the 30-yard line, ran a play on first down, gained a few yards, spiked the ball on second down, stopped the clock, then ran another play. Now, keep in mind, at this point in time, they had no timeouts. They had no timeouts to take. They ran another play, which would have been on third down. All right. So then he stepped up to the line, and I don't know if it was a mental mistake or whatever, and attempted to kneel on the football, which was technically the fourth down play. To set up that situation. It was, I'm sorry, I'm misstepping here. That he attempted to kneel down on what would have been a third down play. They did not have a timeout to stop the clock. So what happened then was he immediately got back up, or shortly thereafter got back up, and then attempted to spike the ball, which would have been the fourth down play,
right.
Changed possession, and then from that, basically what should have happened was Fairfield should have won the game by getting possession on that play. Well, the officials huddled and mistakenly awarded Porta a fifth down play, which they kicked the game-winning field goal on and put 1 second back on the clock and allowed them to do it. One, they shouldn't have been able to run the play. It was a fifth down. Two, time had expired either way. So there was obviously a huge mistake on the officiating's part. From reading some of the aftermath, even the Porta coaches didn't entirely know what had happened in that scenario. And now after the fact are saying, honestly, we should probably forfeit. We did not win the football game. But then it gets into a whole thing of, that there's a bylaw on the books that says we can't change official rulings, even if it's wrong. And as of this moment, as of early this afternoon, the last I saw on the topic, it looks like Porta is going to take, frankly, what is probably an undeserved 9-8 victory, and we'll play Williamsville in the second round of the playoff.
So let me go back to the third down, fourth down sequence. So he tried to kneel it, and was it for positioning of the field goal? I know there's video out there. I haven't gone through it in all of the video, but basically it's a spike on a fourth down that obviously is the question. That seems to be very clear. The third down, was he kneeling to try and get in position for the field goal? Is that what that was?
I think at least my comprehension from watching the video a couple of times was, I think he thought that they had a timeout and did not realize that they did not.
Okay.
I think I may be speaking out of turn. I'm not exactly sure what possessed him to do that.
How much time was left at that point?
I mean, the last time I saw a shot of the clock in this scenario was before they had the one running play, which was 23 seconds on the clock.
Okay.
And that was the play prior to the kneel down. All right.
Okay.
So the kneel down effectively, I mean, when he did it, they had no way to stop the clock. So the clock should have kept running. And from the report that I saw on the game, there was no time on the clock. Whether the spike counted or didn't count, there was no time left. So after it went through all
that adds a whole different element to it.
Yeah. So there were layers to it. There was a little bit of a delay and confusion as to how to enforce the kneel. So there was a pause. But either way, time had fundamentally expired. Whether you were counting the fourth down play or not, there was no time left because they apparently they thought they had a timeout they did not have.
It's shocking that this result could happen this way. Let's talk about the history of a moment like this. Fenwick and Plainfield North were involved in a similar situation in 2017. For those that don't remember, or 2016, for those that don't remember, can you walk us through that so we can have that comparison discussion? Then we'll talk about maybe what should happen, what could happen, so on and so forth. But what was the Fenwick one like?
Basically, in a roundabout way, Plainfield North was trailing Fenwick by 2 points. And there was a situation where I believe it was a penalty of some kind that allowed Plainfield North to get what they should not have gotten, which was an untimed down to kick what was a game-winning field goal that allowed them to beat Fenwick by 1 point. The thing that put that a little bit more in the spotlight was a state semifinal game.
Right.
So the winner of that game was going to the state championship game. There were legal injunctions to try to stop this. I think the biggest difference between that situation and this situation, at least that we know, is there's tons of video evidence on this. Like to use the old tired phrase, we have the technology.
Yeah,
we can clearly see from multiple angles that something was done wrong here. We do not have that. We did not have that visual evidence at the time.
Yeah, and that's what brings the spotlight to this one, because of everyone who was able to see it and look at it. And that question I have for you, Soucie, if you're still with us, we're both going through some spotty signal issues here. The chains is where that's the first instinct for me, is to ask about the chains. And I would think there's a responsibility of the chains to tell the official what down it is more than anything else. And I don't think that was even done. I'm not sure if there was even a conversation that was had, or there was a delay to figure out those chains at all. But that's something that's very unfortunate to see that wasn't really stepped up. And I think the other aspect of this is that the overwhelming favorite is Williamsville, regardless of whether it's Fairfield or Porta in this next game. And so those are the things that you kind of have to think about here. We lost Soucie for a second. We'll get him back in just a second. But, when you look at this situation, it's unfortunate for the kids. We know it's unfortunate for the kids, and for the Porta kids too, that moved on. They also have to, live with the burden of, we won, but did we win? And to ask that sort of question. And so that makes it unfair for everybody involved here. Now, conventional wisdom says, well, just, reverse the decision and give Fairfield the win and call it a day. I don't think you can do that as simply as anyone wants to. That's the thing that can say. John Sally's with us here. He can jump in here as well. It's Mr. Editor-in-Chief here. That's the question about the IHSA, isn't it? And you're kind of asking me on the side here, can they do? And that was something that Soucie had talked about with the bylaws and all.
Right. It's such an unfortunate situation. It's unfortunate for everybody. This is something that you've got kids who have been working towards this season, since December, since January. They've been in the weight room. They've been talking about this, and now the season for one team ends like this, and for another team, you're advancing, but you didn't really earn it on the field, and it's so unfortunate for everybody. But when you look at what the IHSA can or should do in the future, what are some of the things that you think that the IHSA can do? It's never going to be perfect. You're never going to prevent these from happening all the time. Like we said, we talked about it in 2016.
Right.
This has happened, but what can the IHSA even do about this going forward?
I think everyone should listen to this when I say this. I think it's very important to understand that regardless of the call or the way it was handled on the field, officials do make mistakes, but they are the officials that earned that spot. And you cannot overstep the officials. I know there's egregious officiating in spots. As an official myself, I understand that. I don't do football for reasons like this. There's a lot of moving parts. But when it comes down to it, the rules very clearly state that the game official's decisions shall stand. Now, the IHSA needs to figure out, and I don't think this is easy, and I think this may be more of an NFHS conversation for a national standpoint, of a process that shows you how to get around this so that we all understand that the Fairfield kids get a chance to advance. I don't know how you do that. There's obviously video evidence. There has to be an appeals process. There has to be, and honestly, Fenwick and Plainfield North, if you remember, John, it was very ugly. It was ugly, got into courts really quick. And because of the urgency of getting into the state finals was a big reason why for that. This one, I don't feel that same urgency. I think everyone's on the same side of, well, I know that this wasn't supposed to go this way. Whereas I think Plainfield North argued they had a case. So I think there was some unified elements to it on both sides, where I think that's brought the temperature down just a little bit. Yeah. But honestly, I don't think you should override the game officials' decisions, because it takes away from the integrity that the IHSA is trying to instill, that the officiating matters. The officiating is that's how the game is fair.
It opens up such a door that
yes, it does.
If you can overturn this one, then shoot, if I've got video of a missed call in the third quarter of a pass interference, I can go take that to the IHSA.
Right. And I think folks in Bloomington today and have yesterday as well are having those conversations to the extent that we know that this would set a precedent I don't think we want to set. Yeah. And unfortunately, some kids are going to get screwed out of it. Yeah. I think that's really where they are right here. And that's unfortunate. And I think everyone sort of understands it too. I think when you in your heart of hearts, you understand that. I don't know if you got a chance to read the Fairfield release that was sent out. And as a communications guy, it was well done, top notch. It wasn't stoking the fire. It was full of empathy, saying, all right, we understand that we lost this game when we shouldn't have. We understand there's a process to it that's probably not going to be in our favor. They said they appealed it to the maximum capability that they could. That was really well said. Mm-hmm. They also understand that they may not win this, and that they're trying to prepare everybody for the understanding that they may not win this. Yeah. The other aspect that I didn't get a chance to mention with Soucie here is that Fenwick, Plainfield North, there's just more people involved. They're two bigger schools. These are two smaller schools where the community, obviously passionate, but there's not as many. That makes a difference in terms of how this is handled. So
location too. I mean, you've got two Chicago area teams.
Yep.
And
I'm sure the folks at WSIL and maybe some St. Louis media got word of it and picked up the story a bit, but it doesn't cause quite the fervor of having, the third largest market in the country leading the newscasts with that as it was. Also, to say this, and we sort of alluded to this, you and I, before we got hopped on here, is that this is a different media world that we were in 10 years ago, whereas it's social media that's going to dominate this conversation, not the newscasts in terms of how they cover this story. Mm-hmm. So
this was already spreading on the day within an hour of when it happened. Yeah.
And I ultimately feel bad for the kids. I do. And, it's unfortunate. We saw some heartbreak all over the place this weekend. I saw it front and center as we kind of transition back to the games. I'll mention it here when we come back from break, but there's some great games, some great finishes. There was some dominance by conferences, and John, you and I have always talked about the expansion possibilities. And I think everyone saw front and center why expansion is really not a good idea across the board. You and I are going to talk about that next. Let's get a commercial break in and come back here. We're recapping week 10 and the first round of the IHSA postseason. Second round coming up. We're looking back and tying a bow on it when we come back here on Live with Friday Night Drive on Charlotte.
SGKR Injury Attorneys tackles the toughest cases. I'm Matt Rundio. When life throws a flag, we go on offense to protect your rights. Don't get sidelined. Score a touchdown with SGKR. Visit us at sgkr.law.
At Oliver's, we are proud to serve our community. We serve up great customer service, quality products, ease of shopping, and we serve up delicious barbecued sandwiches at our fundraiser cookouts. So stop by Oliver's, 748 North Brinton and Dixon, and help fund our local clubs and events.
In Illinois and into Iowa, the story of Shaw Media is a story of trust. Since 1851, we've been informing, connecting, and reflecting the communities we serve, large and small, rural and urban, suburban, and river towns alike. With dozens of local newspapers, radio stations, magazines, and specialty brands like Friday Night Drive and Starve Rock Country, we meet people wherever they are. We shine a light on local government. We celebrate Friday night touchdowns. We tell the stories that shape your day, from neighborhood heroes to the Chicago Bears. But what truly sets us apart? It's our people. The award-winning journalists, broadcasters, and storytellers who live here, work here, and care deeply about what matters most to you. We don't just report the news. We're part of the fabric of the places we serve, from the Mississippi to the Illinois, from the Fox all the way to the chain of lakes. Trusted for generations, still earning it every day. Shaw Media, your most trusted local source.
All right, welcome back as we are recapping Week 10 and Round 1 of the playoffs here on Friday Night Drive. I'm Matt Rodewald. John Sally is with us. Steve Soucie is somewhere in technical space. We're taping it at a weird time. I have a different background because I'm at a school. You're in your house. It's a thrown-off podcast, and that's
this is not the podcast we planned. This is the podcast we will deliver.
Just pulling back the curtain to go, oh, this isn't as easy as we normally do.
Yeah, I'm the guy in the background on Friday nights, sitting in my kitchen, while Matt and Steve are delivering just expert analysis to you. I'm going to do the best I can as a former sports reporter and sports editor. So happy to jump on board. We will be back at our regularly scheduled time.
We'll figure it out next week. In this case, pay attention to the man behind the curtain. Because he's going to talk today. That's a Wizard of Oz reference if you kids don't realize. All right, so let's dive into a couple things here. We talked about Fairfield and Porta in the fifth down situation. It's a heartbreaking scenario, but there are different heartbreaks that caught my eye. This one started my weekend, John. The Geneseo Rochelle game was so hard for me to watch and listen to. I happen to have it on the radio. Good job with the radio call for those out there. And I tell you what, the folks, there's a lot of folks in central and southern Illinois and northwestern Illinois that still have a powerful radio signal and radio push. I value that every Friday and Saturday during these postseasons. I'm looking for your game, and I'm looking for your local, very local broadcasts sometimes. I caught a little Byron. That was not heartbreaking. That was very much blowout. But Geneseo and Rochelle, heard it on the radio, and the atmosphere at Geneseo sounded just electric and outstanding on Halloween night. Geneseo trailing by 7 points with late, kind of like a similar situation we saw with Bears this weekend, so to speak. But they tied it, or no, they got it within a touchdown or within a point, and then they went for two in the final minute. They did not get it on an option call I didn't necessarily like. They went for the onside kick. They got the onside kick, then marched down the field and kicked the chip shot field goal for the win. And I shouldn't say chip shot, because when I saw it on video, 36-yarder, that was a line drive. It was a tough one for them to get through. But Geneseo wins one 16-14, a heartbreaking loss for the Rochelle Hubs, who've been through so much this year with everything they've had to deal with Dylan Manning, who, by the way, is doing much better, and which is really the moral of the story here. But
really,
man, I would have loved to have seen the ovation he could have gotten had they gotten to a second round or quarterfinal game, and he walks out onto the field and that place loses their mind and applauds and cries and everything else. So we will look to see if Dylan Manning can find his way onto the football field next year. I honestly, I don't care if he plays football ever again. I just hope that young man is able to go to college, get married, have kids, raise a family, and maybe coach football himself someday. That's kind of where you are. So, go ahead.
We are really appreciative of Rochelle continuing to update everyone.
It's awesome.
Process.
Every day.
Awesome to get those updates every day. It's really, really encouraging to see the continued good news in his recovery. I was hoping they could move forward a little bit and give Dylan another week to to get a chance to cheer on his team. And so thank you to the Rochelle community for all of your updates. We hope that we've been able to communicate the support that they have been receiving throughout this process. And certainly Dylan Manning is someone we're all rooting for going forward, no matter where it ends up.
Yeah, John, keep in mind, and you've worked as a reporter a long time, they don't have to give those updates. And part of it is because of privacy issues. Because of the student was injured in a school event, guess what? They don't have to give you anything, really. It's a student privacy law. But out of the common courtesy of what Rochelle football has been doing, they've been giving more detail than anyone would have expected. And I just want to say thank you to that from a reporter standpoint. Also, it also shows some precedence on my other job as a communications director at a school district. I know you set the foundation on how that should be handled. Honestly.
Yeah, and really, it's the Manning family that is ultimately giving the okay to give those updates to the community, and I really am very thankful for that and appreciative of that, because it does. When you get those good news updates kind of every day, he's taking a step forward. It has a really positive effect on the community. So thank you to the Manning family, everybody in Rochelle, taking a truly horrific situation and turning it into a step forward and a process forward kind of every day.
That was a close game that we saw in a weekend where we didn't see a lot of close games. We knew we would see a few, but that one started it for everybody. It's like, part of me was like, is this whole weekend going to be like this? And no, the answer was no. Barrington made sure of that. I think they still scored another touchdown on Elgin. They put 70 on the board. I can't remember a Barrington team putting that many points on anyone, let alone in the playoffs for sure. But we saw blowouts all over the place. Huntley got smoked by a friend over the weekend. What's your take on these blowouts? Because for me, it was a very clear sign that expansion is something we simply do not need at this point across the board.
Yeah, and you're talking to someone who has a much more old school view of it, I think, where I think we should go back to 6 classes personally.
I'd be with you on that too. But
yeah, I think, it's great for everyone to, as many teams as do now make the playoffs, and that's very positive and all that. But this is the result. And so if you want to expand the playoffs even further and add all the 4-win teams, maybe the 3-win teams, maybe a couple 2-win teams, this is going to be the result, where you've got games that ultimately end up kind of meaningless. When you've got a pretty much guaranteed running clock by the second quarter, I don't know how much fun that is for everyone. I've covered those games. I've been on those sidelines. Those kids oftentimes are just kind of waiting for the game to end. And I don't think it really adds value to the playoffs, when the playoffs are really supposed to be a presentation of the best of the teams in the area. And
the first round used to have some magic to it. And I think that it gets taken away from it. I think part of the reason why it had that magic was because it was on Wednesday. And I think that you and I are old school when it comes to it. They're never bringing that back. That's fine. No. Honestly, that's a safety issue. Let's play 3 games in 8 days and see if that's a good idea. No, it's not. Ask freshmen. They've done it way too much anyway. They'll tell you, no, shouldn't do that either. But what happens is that when you bring the expansion in, like the other aspect of it too is that, I got to go to a Nazareth Hononegah game this weekend for NFHS. Did I know what the result was going to be? Oh, yeah, I did. So I understood how this was going to go, and I called it as such. But, Hononegah, they never quit. There were some mistakes made. Nazareth is far and away better, but Hononegah is a 5-4 team that slipped backwards, and their reward for that is facing a Nazareth team that's really, really darn good.
Yeah,
running the ball all over the place. They blocked a punt, returned it for a touchdown. Hononegah, had some positives. There were some big plays. So they felt like, and looking at it, I knew it was 42-0 at halftime. But that was one of those sequences where I did feel like they should be on the football field with this team.
Sure.
Like there was, that. A year ago, I got to see a public league team go out to Geneva, and that really good Geneva team. And you could see them get off the bus. You're going, this is not a good idea. This is not good. Same last year.
A safety issue at a certain point.
Yes. So I think we saw that at games all across the state this weekend, especially some of those higher seed, lower seed type matchups. Anytime you get a public league team facing off against a suburban team, you fear that it's going to go the other way. But overall, we did have some good games, like Lions and York Township went down to the wire again. The game I saw in person on Saturday night, I double dipped. And I got one of the more entertaining ones of the weekend with the Central Rockets and Libertyville Wildcats. It went back and forth and traded leads 7 times, had the rain come in too, and it was a great atmosphere out here at Rocket Hill in Burlington. And, the Rockets are they're in position to make a deep run here. But that Libertyville team ultimately made too many mistakes, had some offensive positivity. You can see the strength of schedule that they played did not make them the 5-4 team that they came in as, whereas Hononegah was a 5-4 team playing a very different schedule. And, this is where you got to weigh it, a certain way. And I know there were a lot of reporters out there that would like to see, coaches get together and actually seed them like sectionals. I don't think you can do that. I think you have to just kind of go based on the matchups you see and, make sure you're ready for it. And I know that the staff out here for the Central Rockets, they were worried about this one from the jump because of the matchup. This week is a different story based on who they have. So, that's something that I find to be very interesting about this playoff format. And that's why I think you should never change it to make expansion water it down even more.
Yeah, and you can't go – it's easier in other sports to seed because there's more games. If in soccer, by the time you get to that seeding meeting – you've played a dozen games.
Yep.
And so you have an idea of what's going on. If you're going to do that for football, in order to schedule it out properly, you're probably missing the back third of the schedule.
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense.
Look, upsets according to seed happen in soccer, volleyball, and football all across the board. Soccer is usually nuts. I mean, there's a Streamwood team that's on the verge of going to the state finals in boys soccer. They're a 6 seed in Class 2A. I mean, soccer is just kind of one of those things too.
It happens.
Volleyball's a momentum sport. So I don't hear anybody over there complaining about the seeds and matchups and, making, part of it is because everybody's in, and I understand that. But with volleyball, you get 32 matches to figure out who's any good or not.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah.
So with football, it's, in Indiana, they do a blind draw. I mean, how fair is that?
That's wild. I didn't know that until you brought that up on
everyone's
on the show.
in, but it's a blind draw. And so all of a sudden you can have the best matchup, in the first round and then coast the rest of the way. Is that fair? Is that fun? No, I don't think it's fun. This way, you do know in Illinois that the best teams will be facing each other deeper into the playoffs. You may have a tough matchup out of the gate, but if you're going to have to play them at some point.
Yep.
And, when I was coaching, I've said it on this podcast before, you're going to have to win on the road in November. I love that.
I love that. No matter
who you are.
Yeah, it is a true test of who you are. I have a funny story. I had in-laws in from Minnesota a couple weeks ago, and I was explaining our football playoff process. It was the same day as the seeding one. They just do straight districts in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So it took me a long time to explain that process. They were like, that's crazy, but I think it's more entertaining than what we have up here because it's very strict. We know what's going on. We know what's happening, and there's a certain cadence to that we like. But like, you could play anybody. You're telling me? I was like, yeah, anybody in your class. You could end up doing that. Now there are flaws and all that, but I do like the unpredictability. I do like that you've got to go win on the road. I think it is a better test than the other systems that are out there. I'm not saying it's the best system, but I think it's a good system for everybody.
I think ultimately too, I think the coaches like the ambiguity. I mean, all coaches like certainty and routine, but this kind of forces them to think about things, and that's fun. Like, do you think Mount Carmel had Belleville East tape on their minds 2 weeks ago?
Nope.
Do you think they figured out how to get down there? No.
Nope.
So, but they will. They'll go down there. They'll have a good time on there. Same for the guys from like the Harlem Huskies. Did they think they'd be coming out to these parts? No. Belvedere North, Canelan. Did you guys have that lined up? Maybe a little more. Yeah. But I also didn't have Canelan putting 68 points in the board for the weekend.
That was wild.
3 pick sixes. Do you have 3 pick sixes in your books? You did not. So there you go. Yeah. But yeah, so that, to tie a bow on it, I think expansion I think people probably got a rude awakening, those who want expansion. And, I'm not sure you really want some of those 3-win teams to go do what was done to some of these 5-win teams or even 7-win teams over the course of the next few years if they think about expansion. Let me switch gears real quick before we wrap it up. Some of the dominance that you saw this weekend. What jumped out to you in terms of conference dominance? The Duquesne caught my eye for sure. St. Charles North looked good. Batavia looked good. Glenbard North did what we talked about, and they shut out Yorkville and got a win there too. They're pretty good.
Man, what a wild end of the year for Yorkville. It was looking like after week 7, or even
One
week 8, they were looking like a 1 seed, and now they're at home watching. That's crazy. Duquesne, completely agree. I think they were simply outstanding. I think it's a shame we talked all year. The West Suburban Silver looked real strong, and you had 2 teams playing each other. The first round, that went down to the final play. Catholic League obviously looked fantastic, and I think we are actually going to pull in. Let's see if it works.
Hey, is he there? Good timing. We got a couple minutes to wrap it up.
Maybe we'll see.
We're gonna get the button going in circles.
Yeah,
just to see if we can do it. I'll just take the flowers for the Fox Valley Conference while we're at it. Prairie Ridge looked sharp. Cary Grove made sure Sycamore wasn't in that one at all.
Yeah.
Jacobs getting a win at Addison Trail, which was impressive only because it was nuts. It went back and forth. It was a wild game. And Jacobs is always one of those, wild cards in the postseason. You never know which Jacobs team is going to show up, whether they, just go out on a whimper in the first round or make a we're just going to go
huge run. They're going to run for 400 yards on people. You really don't know which team is going to show up, but if it's that latter, look out.
Right. So minus Huntley's effort, and then obviously the Central Rockets got through a sneaky one. It wasn't a pretty game by any means, but they got through it. So
never apologize for playoff wins.
Nope. And I was telling the kids that myself. They're like, "Oh, that wasn't good." I'm like, "You won a playoff game. On to the next one." Cares.
Your season is going forward. You get to play
among 128 teams that still have games that matter towards the state championship right now. So final thoughts. We'll wrap this up here. I was very impressed with obviously the Catholic League, Mount Carmel and Loyola. That was a tight one for a while. Loyola played very well and good for them. And some of those, they play a third time. I bet Loyola wins that game.
They got a lot closer this time.
Yeah. And this is one of those with Mount Carmel. You get that test first round, you're ready now. And they are going to be locked in playoff mode, and it's probably going to be as dangerous as they get. I was impressed with St. Rita going up to Guilford and getting a win there too. That was one of those, let's see how the rest of the league does. And I see Catholic just stomped all over Hope Academy. I'd wondered if that was going to be a good game. It was not. And then looking, I went over to Aurora Christian to watch them at Erie Prophetstown for a little bit. I did actually do 3 for a brief, more like 2.5.
Okay.
On Saturday. And Aurora Christian, they looked sharp, they looked bigger, they looked better, and they cruised in that one. But right out of the gate, they were doing anything they wanted to. They got a really good sophomore running back. They've got their quarterback, of course, getting D1 offers. When you have that in Class 2A, that's really hard to beat. So watch out for Aurora Christian to do some damage in the postseason after they got past Erie Prophetstown.
Real quick,
go ahead.
As you're looking forward to round 2, what is the one game you're looking forward to the most?
Here's my thing. I have soccer on my mind because I will be doing the soccer state finals this weekend. So I sort of kind of like done that. Lake Zurich Antioch is intriguing. Nazareth at Wheaton South catches my eye. There are a lot of 9s beating 8s and 10s beating 7s in the lower classes, which means those 1s and 2s go on the road quick. I'm looking at you, Stockton, having to go all the way down to Hayward to play the Hornets. I think they'll come away with a win, but this is one of those things where you get that road game out of the way early, and that's kind of interesting in terms of the mood you're in for postseason football. So curious to see if we can have the path for Prairie Ridge and Cary Grove, but Prairie Ridge has to go to St. Francis. That's going to be a really, really fun football game, similar to what we had with Nazareth and Prairie Ridge a couple of years ago. So looking forward to it. There's some interesting games out there for sure. 7A and 8A. I think Batavia goes to Glenbard East and gets a win. I think we get Lincoln Way East and Palatine, I think, this weekend as well. I don't know what to make of Palatine.
West.
One more time.
Downers Grove North at Glenbard West.
Yeah, you get that already, and you're just knocking out. It's cannibalism in the West Suburban Silver, basically. So, yeah, there's some good ones this weekend, and we're looking forward to it. I don't think I'll be able to get out to a game this weekend, as I'll be in Hoffman Estates throughout the weekend doing the NFHS call. So, folks who care about that, just know that. Soucie will be out and about as well, and then we'll get together next Monday at our regularly scheduled time and do it again. What do you say?
Yes, and it'll be Steve Soucie this time.
Right. You go back behind the curtain. So for Steve Soucie, for John Sally, I'm Matt Rodewald. We'll see you next time as we recap round 2 live with Friday Night Drive here in Shaw Local.